Welcome to the social-engineer.org podcast number 117. In keeping with our new format, I am super excited about this month's podcast. It's with a guest who I've been wanting to get on the show for quite a while. He's an ex-FBI negotiator who also is the author of Never Split the Difference. It's Chris Voss. Super excited about having him on the show. I love his book, the stuff that he talks about in his book, a book that I've kept on my desk for a while. I've been reading, and I'm really excited to see what he has to teach us this month on the podcast. So let's not waste any more time. Let's actually get Chris on the show now. We are back with our guest, Chris Voss. Really awesome to have you on the show today.
Thanks, man. I'm happy to be on with you. Appreciate it.
I'd love to talk a little bit about your background. So, reading your bio here, being in the FBI for so long, and you didn't just focus on just being in the FBI, being a kidnapping hostage negotiator. Is that real?
That is a thing. There's some people that have that job.
Sad that it's needed, but we're glad there's people that actually have that job. How did you get into that?
Well, there's an old Steve Martin joke. You can be a millionaire and never pay taxes. First, get $1 million. It's not exactly like that. First you got to be an FBI agent. Every law enforcement agency has hostage negotiators. The only one that works kidnappings overseas and engages in those negotiations are FBI. I was a cop. I became an FBI agent. I was on the FBI SWAT team. I went to try out for the FBI's hostage rescue team, which is the FBI's version of the Navy SEALs, Delta Force. Matter of fact, a fair number of former SEALs and Delta guys on the HRT. Pictured myself sort of a Bruce Lee, if you will, and studied martial arts in college and had messed up my knee, and it was a recurring injury, and I had it rebuilt twice, and they only put Humpty Dumpty back together so many times. So, before I ran out of repairs on the knee, I thought, well, we got hostage negotiators. They go out with us, the SWAT guys. I mean, that doesn't look hard. All they do is talk to people. I could do that. How hard could that be? And, like most things that you ask yourself, how hard could it be? It's hard. But,
yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was cool. I mean, in order to prepare to be a negotiator, I volunteered on a suicide hotline in New York. And I was blown away at how quickly you could problem solve with people if you knew how to get into them, to borrow your phrase, how to hack your way into a relationship, a position of trust, a position of influence. So I just started applying it to everything I did in my life and kind of worked out.
That's actually a fascinating thought that you went as far as volunteering at something most people would think would really depressing, but a suicide hotline to get better at negotiating for kidnapping situations.
It could potentially be depressing, but that's why I can handle it. I mean, people that volunteer on crisis suicide hotlines that really want to help people. The people who call in actual need of help, it's very gratifying because it's one thing to help somebody who wants to be helped. The crazy thing about most of those lines is that a lot of people are the soul-sucking type of people. They don't actually want to help, but nobody in their world will talk to them anyway, that the only person they can get to talk to them on the phone is somebody on a crisis line. So they call the crisis lines and they just drain the life out of you because they won't let you help. Now, since I was there not to help but to learn a skill, I found everything about it fascinating. And consequently, for me, the bonus points was being able to help people. So not only was I there to learn a skill, but it was tremendously personally satisfying. Since I didn't go there for personal satisfaction to begin with, then that actually sort of immunized me from the people that were the time wasters.
It's interesting because in our industry, sometimes what we'll tell people that maybe don't have a natural skill to talk to folks is go take an improv class or go to a Toastmasters, something not related to our industry at all to learn the skills you may need in our industry. So I find that fascinating. You did the same thing, but you did it also with the piece of I'm going to go help some people while I'm teaching myself how to be a better negotiator.
That was the bonus point. Yeah, I actually ended up being on the board of directors because it was so useful for me professionally, and it was so gratifying for me personally.
So you do that for 20 some years in the FBI, and then did you start just seeing like these skills that you have being useful outside of saving people that were kidnapped? How did you make that connection between I'm really good at helping people get rescued from kidnappers to let me now use these skills in everyday life?
From the hotline days, I was always trying this stuff in my personal life, just trying to make things better. But the real turning point was we had a kidnapping overseas. It didn't turn out the way that I anticipated it would. And when we sort of did a review of everything we did, we decided that we did everything right and it still didn't work out. So my thought was, okay, so if I did everything we know how to do and it didn't work, then the point is we got to get better and we have to go outside. We have to go outside of law enforcement for ideas. So I approached the guys at Harvard Law School and they had a negotiation course. And I said, hey guys, let me come to your course. And they were fascinated at the thought of having an FBI agent, hostage negotiator in. I used to refer to myself as the singing and dancing monkey. You know, I'm sort of like the sideshow hostage negotiator among all the Harvard Law School students who are smart, ridiculously smart people, by the way, and I am not. You know, I didn't know what to do. How am I going to compete with these people? And I just started doing my hostage negotiation stuff on them in the business interactions, and I was killing them. And then after I was up there for a few days, I mean, their instructional staff, Sheila Heen, and some other people up there said to me, like, you're doing the same thing we're doing. The stakes are just different, that's all. But you're doing exactly the same stuff that we need to know how to do in our world. And for me, that outside validation of the Harvard people telling me that it would work, that was finally the validation that I needed.
That's actually an interesting story then. So you went to this course and to learn, but you found out that you basically were doing everything that they were teaching anyway.
In my book, we call it tactical empathy, but they just called it empathy. And they had the mercenaries' definition of empathy, which is, one of the same definitions that Daniel Goleman, he calls it cognitive empathy, the guy that invented the term emotional intelligence. And that definition is neither agreement nor disagreement. It's not sympathy. It is not compassion in any way. It's just completely understanding the other side without agreeing with them and then articulating what you believe to be their perspective. Now, that sounds really simple, but most people can't do that with people they don't agree with. If you disagree, you can't be empathic. It's sort of how a lot of people react. And as a hostage negotiator, how the hell am I going to agree with a terrorist? I'm never going to agree with them. But I still need to be able to communicate with them and influence them. When we knew that we were on exactly the same sheet of music on that definition as Harvard, then we knew that we could work together.
Dr. Goleman's work has always been of interest to me, especially his research into not only emotional intelligence, but amygdala hijacking. This is like a whole nother level of that, like actually dissecting empathy down to different forms. Being on the same side as someone you completely disagree with sounds like almost an impossibility for most of us. How do you accomplish that goal then with someone like a terrorist? How do you get on the same sheet?
It's kind of getting out of your own way, and it seems counterintuitive, but if you go back to, the Stephen Covey advice, seek first to understand, then be understood. When we're teaching this to people that come to our negotiation training sessions, what's not there is as important as what is there. What's not included is how you really define the limits of this. Covey's advice, seek first to understand, then be understood. There's not a single word in there of agreement. No agreement required. And as soon as no agreement is required, then of course disagreement is not required. Understanding is not agreement. And a lot of people feel somehow that it is. The other crazy thing about empathy is so many people see this as a soft/weak skill. The last politician to talk about using empathy openly was Hillary Clinton. And the people who hate Hillary, all the names that they've ever called her weak is not on that list. So even if you're not a fan of Hillary Clinton, as an empathy advocate, nobody ever called her weak, and nobody ever accused her of giving in or being a pushover or any of those things that seem to come along with what you have to be in order to be empathic. And Hillary Clinton understands it. The people that hostage negotiators understand it. The people at Harvard understand it. It's a powerful tool of influence, and it doesn't require agreement.
I feel like that's it. We can end.
Thank you for coming. Good night, everybody.
That's it. You just taught us something completely valuable. So I do a 5-day training class where we talk about social engineering and using the skills in security. We discuss getting on common ground. It always is a hard concept for so many people in the class because when I ask them to define how they would do that, before I give them any input, many students talk about how they would try to convert, or they would present so many facts that you would essentially convert to their belief system. Everyone always says that this is going to be, but would that work on you? If you were in an argument or a debate or whatever, a disagreement, would it work to just present all your facts and then you're just going to be like, oh, I guess you were right. I should believe this way. No, it doesn't work that way. And what you just said, what I love, is removing the whole concept of agreement or disagreement out of it. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I just need to understand where you're coming from. And that's my only goal right now in that conversation. That's beautiful.
It's so simple and so clean. And if you can wrap your mind around it like that, then literally it has no limits. I think that's cool also.
Yeah. And can be used in any communication with anyone, not just like hostage negotiations, right? Not just social engineering, but literally with anybody.
Between Republicans and Democrats.
So do you ever get in arguments now, or is this the cure to all marriage problems? We just solved all the marriage problems on Earth too, I think. This one podcast.
I'm still human, so I still get in my own way sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I've had people ask me the same question. They say like, "Oh, you must never fall for scams because what you know." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You're kidding me, man! I get an Amazon fish in the email, and I click on that thing so fast I can't even see it." So you started your company, Black Swan. Why did you name it Black Swan? Was there some significance behind that?
All right, now, if I may, the entirety of the title is the Black Swan Group, of course, because we're a group. I'm not singular, although some people call me the Black Swan. But Nicholas Nassim Taleb put a book out in 2007 where he latched onto a concept called the Black Swan. The subtitle was The Impact of the Highly Improbable. How tiny little things can end up making massive big differences. And he got the idea of the Black Swan from, Western Europe in the 16th century. They said, they only had white swans, and they said, well, a black swan could never exist. And then when they found black swans in Australia, they were blown away by them. So I love the metaphor of the tiny little things that are game changers. And in negotiations, if you take agreement out of empathy, it's a game changer. If you take the need for common ground out of a discussion, it's a tiny thing that's a game changer. So we like the tiny things that are huge game changers. Tony Robbins talks about the 2 millimeter shift. What's the 2 millimeter shift that ends up being massive in a very short period of time? And that's the kind of stuff where we're trying to make those tiny changes that are the game changers.
I love when the name of a company has actually got a deeper meaning. I love that because mine has zero meaning. The name of my company is Social Engineer. So basically it means what it is, So when I meet someone who actually thought through, they called it something that has a real deep meaning to it, that has an explanation, I always find that a little fascinating. So thank you for sharing.
Well, I tell you, the one thing about the name was, I do a CNN thing one time, Anderson Cooper, Christiane Amanpour, Jeffrey Toobin are on. And they're doing this interview panel and they're asking me some questions. And I start joking around with them. And finally, Jeffrey Toobin can't help himself. He goes, what? This is bothering me. I just got to ask this question. He says, the Black Swan Group, that is the baddest ass name I ever heard. Where'd you come up with that name? And everybody laughed, and I inside to myself, I'm saying like, Jeffrey, thank you very much for that commercial.
Yeah. Thanks for promoting. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was the baddest ass name I ever heard. I'm like, yeah, all right. I can live with that.
So in your book, you discuss a concept that you call mirroring early on in your book in one of the first couple of chapters. This is always an interesting concept for us, too, in our industry. So I'd just like to get your input on it before I even say anything. Just how do you define it? How do you use it? What kind of a skill set is that?
All right, so the hostage negotiator's mirror. The negotiator's mirror is not you put your hand to your chin, I put my hand to my chin. It's not the physical body language mirror. It's simpler than that, and it's more effective than that. A hostage negotiator's mirror is just repeating the last 1 to 3 words of what somebody has just said. And it is insanely simple. It takes no brain power whatsoever to do it. And people find it so encouraging. I mean, it acts as this connecting device for people's thoughts, and they just keep going. And then when you get really good at a mirror, you move out of the last 1 to 3 words, maybe to a selected 1 to 3 words within the conversation. And then you can steer the conversation, or you can get clarification, or you can interrupt in a gentle way. There's so many things you could do with a mirror, and it is so simple. People don't believe it works until they try it out, and then they're like, I just went through the whole day, and I had 45-minute conversations with everybody I spoke to, and the only thing I ever did was mirror. I mean, it's nuts.
I can see how that would work so effectively. Like, in essence, by doing that, you're saying to the person, hey, I'm listening to you, I've heard you, and I want to know more, so keep talking.
Yeah, you say all those things. And then the last thing that's actually really critical about it, too, is like I never ask anybody, what did you mean by that? I will mirror what I want to ask it about, because you run across some knucklehead like me. If I say, look, I need you to get the notebooks ready. And this is one of the interactions from our training sessions. And my son says, what do you mean by notebooks? And I just go, notebooks. I say it even louder, like an American overseas, right? Trying to get somebody to understand me. Because I think my word choice at this point in time is perfect. And finally, he just mirrors me and he goes, notebooks? And I go, yeah, 3-ring binders. So people change their words when you mirror them instead of repeating the same thing, only louder. And it's an automatic change, because the other thing that you tell someone when you don't completely understand, you're also in a really subtle, respectful way saying, the words you use aren't the right words to get through to me, so please use some different words. And people then change their words and they give you a much fuller explanation.
That is fascinating. I imagine that works amazing on teenagers who will constantly give you very short answers to really important questions that you're asking them about their day. This would probably work wonders on getting your teenagers to open up and talk to you about things.
1,000%. And not just your teenagers. I just got an Instagram message from a guy who's a high school teacher, and he read the book. So his day, all day, every day is teenagers, right?
Oof.
What he has started to do is he's using mirrors and labels on them, and now they're opening up to him. So he's inflicted with them 10 hours a day instead of just, around the dinner table at night at home. And he says it works beautifully.
We fixed marriages, families, and communications with kids all in the first 20 minutes of this podcast.
Again, thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Please send all checks to Chris Voss at
BlackSwanLTD.com.
Yeah, there you are. Let's take a quick break from the show to talk about what's going on in the world of social engineer. Whew, it's a ton. Okay, you ready for this? Well, by the time that this podcast is out, if you're not sitting in my class in Bristol, UK, it's a little too late. So you got one more chance for an APSE class in 2019, and that is the one that will be happening in Black Hat. You can find the information on our site about that. That's August 3 through 6, the APSE class at Black Hat, which I believe is about 80% full at the time that we recorded this. So you may want to jump in there and grab your seat if you're still interested in coming out to that event. If not, keep watching the site. We'll be releasing the 2020 dates with some other really special announcements coming up soon. So that's about it for training. Let me talk about what else is going on. So Black Hat announcements in full swing, right? CFP, if you want to sign up for call for papers, that will be closing really, really soon. The SECTF signups, we're going to be announcing that contestants have been chosen really, really shortly. You better get your signups in there. This is like your last chance to do that. But come out and see us at DEF CON. The SE Village is huge this year, 11,000 square feet. We're on the whole 3rd floor of Bally's there. So come on out. Check us out and see us. Come hang out with us. It's our 10th year anniversary at DEF CON running the SE Village. So I'm super excited about this year out in August in beautiful, sweaty, oven-like Vegas. Okay, well, oven-like is about the only adjective that fits there. What else? We're going to be at a DerbyCon in September. Can't wait for that. I know it's the last Derby, and we're all sad to see Derby end, but we got some really exciting things planned for the SE Village out at Derby, so you can keep checking the site for that at social-engineer.org. See what we have going on there. Let's see, what other things can I announce? If you haven't checked it out yet, head on over and check out my TEDx speech. Really excited about that. And of course, our nonprofit, the Innocent Lives Foundation. Please check out that site at innocentlivesfoundation.org and the really important work that we're doing there. If you love the intro and outro music, that's from Clutch, Emily Dickinson from their new album. Really awesome song. You can enjoy that there. And we thank the guys from the band for letting us use that in our podcast. Okay, that's about it I got to say. Let's get back to Chris and learn some more awesome stuff. I really am curious, though, about this connective leap, because you're overseas, you're using all of these skills with terrorists who maybe kidnapped an American and they're going to kill them. And now you're saying, I think this would work on a teenager, so I'm going to try it. How did you make that first leap, though, to be like, I'm going to try this outside of the kidnapping/terrorist world?
I had been doing the fundamental basis of it from the hotline in my personal life for a long time. On the suicide hotline, which blew me away from the very beginning, when they're training us, they're saying, you got a time limit of 20 minutes. So no matter who calls in, no matter what they're talking about, you got to get that call done in 20 minutes or less. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. Like I see suicide calls on TV. They're on a phone with people for hours.
Yeah. What are you supposed to do in 20 minutes if you're not done? Just end the call?
Well, what they taught us was if you're doing it right, it's going to take 20 minutes or less. The empathy is actually a tremendous time hack, again, to use your term, because you get dialed into people and you get to the heart of the matter really fast. So I thought if I do this right and it's going to take 20 minutes or less on these problems which people are suicidal over, I have got to try this stuff out in my everyday life to see if it has the same kind of effect. And it did. It does. And so they bundle that with, I already know on hostage negotiations globally, every hostage negotiation team in the world, whether they're in Baghdad or Bogota or Brooklyn, uses the same skills. So I already know there's a universal application here because they wired into people not based on culture, but based on the fact that, as you mentioned earlier, that they have an amygdala. Everybody's got an amygdala. So we're going after that amygdala early on because they got one. And so I remember thinking like, all right, so now in our bargaining scenarios, what happens if we drop this emotional intelligence into the bargaining? Then what's going to happen? And that's when we just started increasing our effectiveness, shortening the negotiation time frames, making everything work much, much faster. And a terrorist on the other side of the table, while to us it's a horrific thing, to them it's another day at work. You know, that's what they do. And they look at it like that. So the key to any negotiation is it's not what it is to you, it's what it is to them, which immediately also takes us back to the Stephen Covey thing, seek first to understand, then be understood. Understand what it is to them, and you can dial into them, and you can hack the process.
That's actually a fascinating topic, especially in something as extreme as that. Maybe we can bring it less extreme in a minute, but looking at something as extreme as dealing with a terrorist, how do you even start in the finding out what it is that they want? They're obviously in an angry situation. They're threatening to kill this person unless you meet their demands. Their demands might seem a little bit unreasonable or even impossible. How do you get to there? How do you use tactical empathy in that situation?
Everybody is dying to tell you what's on their mind. So the terrorists are resorting to violence because they're having trouble getting people to pay attention to them. That's why they opted to go that route. But to them, it's simply a means to be heard. So, all right, I'll hear you. And that they find that very disarming. They're shocked. And they're used to people arguing with them, just like we are day to day, used to people arguing with us. You know, we get into a conversation with somebody, they don't want to hear us out. They want to tell us why we're wrong. Well, all right, think of how susceptible somebody who's willing to kill to be heard. Think of how susceptible to the feeling of being hurt.
So it's really just telling them you want to hear what their demands are and then truly listening.
It's actually just truly listening from the very beginning. Like I get recruited back in 2010 to teach the National Hostage Negotiation Team for the United Arab Emirates, the UAE. This is an Arab country, an Arab government that is pro-U.S. They are more pro-U.S. than Israel is pro-U.S. I mean, they are on our side. And they're worried about terrorist attacks from Al-Qaeda themselves. So they're bringing me in. I just left the FBI, and they want to sit me down with the sheikh that's in charge of everything. And before they sit me down with this guy, they tell me in advance, understand now, if we have a terrorist event here, if Al-Qaeda takes hostages in the USC, make no mistake, the sheikh wants to kill these guys. He's not bringing you in to be nice. And I'm like, fine, I am definitely your guy.
Yeah.
So I sit down with this guy. He's an Americanized guy, super smart dude. He's actually got his undergraduate and graduate degree in the United States. Very pro-Western, very understanding of American thought processes. And basically says to me, what are you going to teach my guys to say? And I say, first moment they get a terrorist on the phone, if you have an incident, I'm going to teach them to say to the terrorist, what you're doing is a great thing. And the sheikh's mouth drops open.
Yeah, I think mine would also.
And I say, the terrorist is going to react exactly the way you're reacting right now because you were so shocked and you were sitting there dying to hear what I'm going to say next. You couldn't be more glued into me at this moment, and you're so focused on me. And I said, right now, I got you. And he looked at me and he said, you're hired. We teach people to say the stuff that catches people so off guard, but not in a way that inflames them, but in a way that makes them ridiculously curious as to what I'm going to say next. Because now, what's our problem in communication is focus, getting the other person to focus on what we have to say. You get them to focus on what you have to say, by articulating something not only that they agree with, but they're shocked that you agree with it. And at that moment in time, it gets back to Daniel Goleman's book, Focus. How do you get the other side to focus on you? And when they're focused, they're ripe for influence.
Could they sit there and go, come on, there's no way you actually think that what I'm doing is great? Why would you say that?
The next question, that's what I want them to ask. Now we have the magical dialogue. I'm showing respect for your position. I did a similar version of this when I was in New York. I was on a terrorist task force. We held the largest terrorist trial in the history of the United States in a civilian court in the early 90s. And the world did not come to an end. We prosecuted al-Qaeda terrorists in open civilian court in New York City in the 1990s. And we did not need Guantanamo Bay. We did not need harsh interrogation techniques. We did not need any of that crap that the CIA sold the Bush administration on after 9/11. That was all crap.
Yeah.
And we had Muslim witnesses testifying in open court voluntarily against other Muslims. Because, believe it or not, Muslims don't like it when other Muslims commit crimes and murder people. And there are decent people in every community, and there are no shortage of Muslims that viewed them not as terrorists, but as murderers and criminals. And they voluntarily testified. But the way we got into them every single time was I would sit down with them and I would start my conversation saying, you believe that there's been a succession of American governments for the last 200 years that are anti-Islamic. You could see a shocked look come across their face and say, yeah. Now, I never said it was true. All I did was respect their belief. I never agreed. And not one of them ever took that as an agreement or that I was supportive of it. And I was certainly always prepared at any point in time for them saying, oh, so you think that's correct? You think that the U.S. government is anti-Islamic? And I was always prepared to say, absolutely not. Not in any way, shape, or form. But I'm willing to respect that you believe that. That's empathy. That's how you get into these conversations. I don't agree, but I have no problem respecting that you believe that.
Perfect. So like, even if they call you out and ask, you're not saying, yeah, you're not trying to fake that you agree.
Exactly.
And you're not even trying to convert them to your belief system. You're simply saying, hey, I get it. I wanted to understand yours.
Yeah. It's a step beyond I get it. It's showing them you get it. This is just Covey's guidance. Seek first, understand. But, I think the critical words that probably if he had a chance to write that again, he'd probably say, seek first to show what you understand. Because a lot of people think that seek first to understand, just because you understand, that's adequate. You got to show what you understand.
Yeah. Man, another one.
I'm going to get to Final Jeopardy here, aren't I? I'm doing pretty good so far.
You are going to get to Final Jeopardy. I think people are fascinated with this topic. So, you cover all of this in your book, Split the Difference.
Never split the difference.
Never split the difference.
You did that on purpose. You wanted me to put the never part in there, right?
I was trying to apply some of your principles you just taught me. Failed miserably, by the way.
No worries.
So if people want to know a lot more about these topics, they can go and read that book.
Here's what I want to say about the book also. Our co-writer, and my son's name is on the book, but he collaborated on the book. But our co-author is Tal Raz. And the reason the book is so readable is because of Tal Raz. Tal is a genius writer. The book is ridiculously readable. It's entertaining. And it's because of Tal Raz. Tal Raz is a superstar business book writer. I would promote it anyway, but I know it's a great read, and that's because of Tal.
When you have a good partner to work with, it's amazing what they can help you do, right?
Yeah, exactly. The right partner.
Take all of your thoughts and make them even better.
He did. He made it an entertaining read.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, I heard you say that you do negotiation classes also.
End to end, man. We coach people. We have open enrollment trainings. We got a bunch of stuff online. You want to get better at negotiation, we'll help you get there.
So if people wanted to find out more about that, where do they go to get that info?
The simplest way is to subscribe to our newsletter. It comes out on Tuesday mornings. It's a short, sweet, concise read. Some people's newsletters are so packed with information that by the time you try to figure out what you want to read, you got to go get a cup of coffee and take a nap. Our newsletter is concise. It's usable. Like everything that we put out, we want it to be concise and usable. And we got training announcements in there. We got announcements for other material that we're putting out. The newsletter is a gateway to everything that we do. And the simplest way to subscribe to the newsletter is a text to sign up function. You text to the number 22828. That's the number you're sending the message to, 22828. And the message you send to that number is FBI empathy, all one word. Your spell check is going to try to put a space between FBI and empathy. Don't let it do that. Got to go out as one word, and you send it to the number 22828. You get a text response asking you for your email address. We're doing trainings across the country this year. We're doing one a month. You know, as you and I speak, it's April. We're going to be in Dallas later this week. We're coming to New York next month. We're going to be in Chicago in July. We're going to be across the country, and those dates and how to sign up for that training, which is not cheap. The email is free. Our in-person training is expensive. We have a lot of free stuff online also. Free is a good price. So explore all our free stuff. And then when you've raised your game to the next level, then you can come to one of our trainings.
No, I love it. I just signed up for the newsletter as you were talking. So,
oh, excellent. It works.
I just did it. It worked. I did it. So now I can tell everyone that was quite simple, quite effective, and a really easy process. And you know what? You could say it's expensive, but here's the deal. To me, value is in what you get out of it. So if this is something that you're going to use in your everyday life, and it's something you're going to use not just as a personal thing, but also in your career, then value will come back in how you use it, because you'll probably see returns on it right away. Just from this short conversation in 35 minutes, the amount of information that you shared, if there's a couple days of that and waiting for anyone who signs up for a course, I'm sure they're going to walk away with volumes of knowledge when it comes to this stuff.
We accelerate you in that class. It's definitely an accelerator.
Can they find out all that info on your website, which is blackswanltd.com?
Yep.
So if they wanted to find out more about you, like if they wanted to just follow you, how else would they do that?
What's your taste, so to speak?
Probably a lot of Twitter in this industry.
If you like Twitter, I'm on Twitter at Voss Negotiation. If you like Instagram, I'm at the FBI Negotiator. If you like YouTube, we got a bunch of videos on our YouTube channel, the Black Swan Group's YouTube channel. And depending upon how you learn, you can pick stuff up here and there. Maybe you want to read, maybe you want to watch. Most people like to supplement how they gather information several different ways.
I like podcasts, but I'm also into the videos. And when I take a class, I know I'm one for doing live training. I'm big into the live training. I seem to learn more when I can interact with the instructor as opposed to doing it online.
There's some immersion there, isn't there?
I always have questions. And I find like if I have the question at the moment and I have to write it down and then email it, it's not as effective for me as if I can raise my hand and say, hey, when you said this, what did you mean by that? Or, how can I apply this? And that just seems to work for me a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, you got your mind wrapped around it at the moment, right? You're focused on it.
Yeah. And for me, that's a big thing too. Being able to focus on one thing. So when I'm doing online training, my email's open, my browsers are open, and I'm trying to do 10 things at once, which we all know multitasking is not a reality.
No, it is so bad.
It is bad. So one of the things we always ask our guests, because we have a lot of people who love to read that listen to this podcast. So, of course, I'm going to put your book, Never Split the Difference, in the show notes. But is there another book? It can be about any topic you like, but maybe a book that you've read recently that you really enjoyed that we can put into the notes?
There's 2 books, and, the book/author, I'll talk about both of them. All right, so The Rise of Superman by Stephen Kotler. Now, Kotler is heavy into the science of flow, which is human performance. And he's got a couple books out there, but the best one to start with is The Rise of Superman. And if you want to really look to increase and understand the neuroscience behind what flow is and how you can tap into it, it's a great read. I mean, Kotler's sharp dude. And The Rise of Superman is a great book. I like anything that he's written, and I would start with The Rise of Superman.
That's awesome. I've never heard of this one, so I'm putting that on my own personal list too.
The other guy/book I like, Daniel Coyle, he wrote The Talent Code and The Culture Code. The Talent Code is, again, about improving you and your individual talent. And The Culture Code is about improving the culture in your company.
Oh, that's nice.
Both of them are, Coyle writes some great stuff. He starts out with great examples. And it's usable, it's implementable stuff. I like both those guys a lot.
That's great recommendations. Especially that last two, there's something that we've been discussing in our industry quite heavily is finding people that not just have the talent, because there's a lot of people with great talent, but sometimes you have the right talent, but you have the wrong culture and it still doesn't work in your organization. And all the talent in the world doesn't mean they're just going to fit your model and your culture. And I've experienced that in my company myself, and we've been having these discussions. That's a really fascinating topic for a book. I haven't read either of those, but now you gave me 3 more reading assignments.
Time spent with either of those authors is time well spent.
Yeah, especially at these topics, it sounds like they're going to be really beneficial. This was fascinating. Really appreciate you making the time to come on, sharing some of this knowledge with us.
Yeah, man.
You know, when this comes out, I'll let you know. We can promote it, and I'm sure everybody will be hitting up your site, and you may even see some of our listeners in one of your upcoming seminars or classes. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely my pleasure. That time flew by.
Yeah, it certainly did. Thanks. Well, that was another amazing podcast. I've been wanting to get Chris Voss on for a really long time. I'm really happy that he came on and gave us a lot more time than we had originally asked for. I don't even know what to name this podcast because I learned so many things. I just kept having ideas pop up in my head, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. By the time you're listening to this, you already know that we chose a good one. So hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did. Anyhow, if you got any great ideas for guests, please keep emailing them in. Let me know how you like the new format of the podcast. Hopefully, I know it's taken us 117 months to get here, but hopefully you're liking the lean, mean new podcast machine. Yes, I did it again. Check us out on social-engineer.org, our corporate site, social-engineer.com. My Twitter, Human Hacker. SE Village on Twitter also, and our corporate at SOC, that's SOC Engineer Inc. That's all the ways to get a hold of us, so check us out in one of those places and ping us at any time. Our Innocent Lives Twitter is innocent.org. I guess that's it. Until next month. See ya.